thank you so much for being here, everybody. Some of you I know, I'm seeing some familiar names. Just to clarify, this is a Zoom webinar as opposed to a Zoom meeting. A Zoom meeting, which is what I know most of us are used to, I'm used to it, that's where you see all the little squares. Okay, but because this is a Zoom webinar and we're kind of dealing with large amounts of people, you guys see me, I hope, and soon my screen, and I see your names. So I will see if your hands are up. I see a few people have their hands up. And I will most likely see your chat, but once I start screen sharing, I'm not necessarily gonna be able to get to you so quickly. So please don't be offended, and I'm really looking forward to this. So with that being said, I just wanna give a few points before we start the content of tonight. The first thing is, I just wanna let everybody know that I am not going to be talking about any technological apps tonight, meaning there are many, many, many apps out there that help with virtual learning. There's boom cards, there's all sorts of things going on. Everybody has access to different systems and everybody has access to different things. So I thought it best not kind of jump into that arena. So what I will be focusing on tonight is we are going to work with what we have, okay? And how can we make our virtual learning for our little kids as engaging and as valuable as possible. So that's why we're here. So we'll not be talking about any of the tech stuff. Another thing that's important to say before we start is we're not here to reinvent the wheel. I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. What I mean by that is you guys are all talented, gifted teachers and educators. You are here, which means you care about doing whatever you can to make your teaching everything it can be. And I'm here as a teacher coach, as a teacher mentor, to kind of help you hone in on the skills and the things that you are probably already implementing in your classrooms when you are in your actual classroom. And I'm here to help you make that as meaningful and impactful as possible in your virtual learning. So that's number two. Number three, you are all here after a very long day, undoubtedly, of teaching. Many of you have children. So I want to start off just by saying thank you for being here. It shows that you want to grow. It shows that you want to do all you can, and it does not go unnoticed. And right now we're at a time of, uncharted territory, and we're just trying to figure it out. So if I can kind of help at all along the way, I will be very happy to do that. And if you could take one thing away from tonight, then I did my job. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Let me share my screen. Okay, just with some thumbs up or hands up or whatever, can everybody see my screen right now? Yes, 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 awesome. Woo! Oh my goodness, okay. All right, okay, so I'm really happy that that at least is working. Okay, so the name of our workshop tonight is the tips and techniques to strengthen student engagement in virtual learning. That's a really fancy way of saying how the heck are we to navigate this ridiculous situation and make it as impactful as possible for for these children. Now we know that many of these children are young, they're all young. They have different attention spans, they have different things going on in their homes. And so we are going to try our best to do the best we can, and that's why we're here. Okay, so let's, whoops, ooh, okay, who am I? Let's start with who I am. Now, those of you who have had me in your school to do workshops, I'm really sorry for the repeat, but I would really, one of my most important things when I am speaking to educators or to parents is to let you know who I am. Okay, I'm not a stranger, and I want you to know who I am. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself personally and then professionally, and then we'll begin. So I'm gonna go through this fast since we're running late. Who am I? My name is Yehudis Smith. I was born in South Africa. I don't know if there are any South Africans here, but I was born in South Africa and raised in Tampa, Florida. Oh, I see some South Africans, I love it. That is my husband. He is not jumping from the ground. He's jumping from the windowsill. Everyone looks at that picture and says, how does he jump so high? No, he was jumping from the windowsill, and that was our wedding day 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago. 9 years ago, I had my first child, Hannah. She is now 9.5. And exactly a year later to the day, my son was born. They are Irish twins. They share the same birthday, 1 year apart. So needless to say, that was fun. And 18 months later, my third child came on the scene, and that made 3 under 3, which is exactly what you would think it would be, exactly what the memes say it is. 3 hands under the door when you're in the bathroom, 3 different size diapers, 3 different bottles. And needless to say, 3.5 years later, my youngest was born, and he is about 3.5. So this is my beautiful family. I'm very blessed. This is a picture of what I always thought mothering would be like. This is what I thought my family would be like. This is what my family actually is like. This is real life. And I would not trade it for the world. So that is my personal background. Now, let's get to my next one. What's happening? Here we go. Okay. So from a professional perspective, who am I? Since I did grow up in Florida, and I am a Floridian, I went to the University of Florida. If there are any Gators out there, I don't know if I'm gonna start seeing hands going up. There's gotta be, yes. Okay, so I went to the University of Florida, and I got my bachelor's degree in English Lit, quite frankly, just because I loved reading and writing, and I didn't know what else I was gonna do. So I got my bachelor's degree in English Literature, and then I moved to New York City to live the dream. I thought I was gonna get a big corporate job. Instead, the only job I could find was an assistant in a 2-year-old classroom at a beautiful, amazing school on the Upper East Side of Manhattan called Ramaz. I thought, great, it's gonna be babysitting, it's gonna be amazing. And obviously, very quickly, I learned that that was not the case, but I did fall in love with it. So I decided to go back to school, and I got my master's degree in early childhood education. It's a dual degree, special ed and general ed both. And I got my first head teaching job in a cute little trendy, hippie kind of school in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn Heights, called Kane Street Kids. And then we decided to move down to Florida, where I got a job teaching for a good number of years at a beautiful, amazing school here in Boca Raton. Called Torah Tots. And there I was very extensively trained in conscious discipline. So I have received training in that. And because I had such little kids at home, I decided this is a little too hard for me. I think I want to leave the classroom for now. And so what I did was I opened up a business, and that is what I'm doing now. I am a teacher, consultant, coach, parent, educator, and coach, and I love it. So this is what I thought I would be as a teacher, right? This is what we all thought we'd be as teachers. And this is a little bit more accurate representation of what I actually probably was as a teacher. And then of course now, I'd say this is the most accurate representation of what we are doing all day long with these kids. So, ooh, I see some South Africans happening over here. Awesome. Welcome. Okay. So that is who I am in a nutshell. This is my business that I have now. And now we are going to dive right in. I see I have a question here, but I think that was from before. So hopefully that was dealt with already. Okay. Oops. Let's go back. All right. So what are we going to cover tonight? Well, the first thing that we're going to cover is setting appropriate goals. We know that we are in uncharted territory. So what are the appropriate and reasonable goals to set for our children, for the children in our care, and also for us as educators? So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. The second thing we're going to talk about is what I like to call classroom salesmanship. And we're going to talk more about what that means and how that pertains to this new way of teaching. And then when we're finished with that, we're going to move on to some specific activities and how to implement the things that we learned in that classroom salesmanship section of the presentation. Okay, so that is what we are here to do. So let's go. Does anybody, I don't know if anyone has any questions. What I do want to say is if you do have questions as I go along the way, please jot them down. And if you are here on Zoom, and I'm sorry for those who aren't, but if you are here on Zoom, then hopefully at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes where we can maybe discuss some of those questions. If not, I will give you my email address if you don't have it already, and you can email me, and hopefully we can get those answered. Okay, let's go. Just gonna take a drink of water. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is, let's see if someone's asking something. Oh, please tell them to join on Facebook Live, my page. Okay. Okay, so now we're talking about setting appropriate goals for the children in our care before we get to us. So let's remember a few things that are very, very crucial when it comes to thinking about these children. Number one, and this is key, and by the way, a lot of the things I tell you are also pertinent to when you're in the actual physical classroom. And this is kind of one of those things. Young children cannot sit and focus for an extended period of time. We know that already, right? But what's the actual amount that they can? It's 3 minutes per 1 year of a child's age. That means that if you teach 3-year-olds, 9 minutes that they can sit and focus on average, before they start to wander. Now that is the way their brains are designed, right? That is the way they're developing, and that is what is normal and standard for them. Now this is the case when we're actually in front of them and interacting with them. So how much less are they able to engage with us when we are in this little box? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, you don't have the luxury of physical touch. With little kids, we know that they need connection. Children thrive from connection, right? And you know that there are those kids, like they say, the kids that kind of nag at you or drive you nuts. So some people like to say, oh, just ignore them, they just want attention. But actually, they just want connection. And that's something that we know already. So already we're kind of at a disadvantage, and we're playing with a set of cards that is already not full. Okay, and number two of that is you're relying on the parents' help. Now, parents have a lot going on. I know I have my 4 kids. They all have different Zoom schedules. I'm running back and forth, and it's hard, right? So there's no judgment here. Sometimes you're gonna have those parents with you, helping you, being there as a partner, and other times you're not. And you still have to do your job. So that's number two. And number three is the same sensory issues, developmental delays, auditory processing challenges, impulsive behavior, all that kind of stuff, that didn't go away. And actually, I'll take it a step further. Not only did it not go away, it most likely is being exacerbated by the circumstances that are here, right? Children thrive off of routine, and they're not getting that now. So a child who has a hard time with their cognitive flexibility, with figuring out how to adapt to new situations, they're having a really hard time right now, okay? So the reason why, I know it seems like I'm just trying to show you that all the odds are stacked against you. That's not the case. The reason why I am putting this out in black and white, and I know you know all this already, is because oftentimes we set our expectations in an unreasonable way. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we're expecting that our 30 minutes or however long you have with these kids are going to go smoothly. You're expecting that they're going to be engaged in every single way. And we know that's not even true in the classroom. By the way, I'm looking at myself in the corner. I probably should not be. I probably should be looking at the camera. So let me not look at myself. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. I want to talk about something that I believe is a game changer when it comes to virtual teaching and virtual learning. And that's something called brain breaks. Now, this might be something you know of already, right? These are those breaks that we take when we see that the kids in our classroom just are not having it, right? They're getting up, they're doing, they're break dancing on the floor, and they're just not able to sit. So remember that 9 minutes I said, that 9 minutes I spoke about with 3-year-olds, that they cannot hold their attention? So a brain break, so let me define it first. A brain break is a mental and physical pause designed to help students stay focused. So what does this mean? So we'll go through this really quickly. I mean, you guys probably know this already. I just want to get through this really quickly. How do they work? Well, what happens is these kids are sitting and sitting and sitting, and naturally their development of their brain is such that all of that happy juice, that dopamine, that serotonin, that oxytocin, the natural opioids, all that stuff that's being, oh gosh, someone's asking, I have 5 teachers looking and can't find it. Sorry, guys. Let me see. If someone could, maybe someone, just so I don't have to stop talking, maybe someone can help her get to the right place. Is that possible? Okay. Just gonna keep going. Hopefully she'll find it. It is, Yehuda Smith is my name, obviously, and my Facebook is, the live is open. So they should be able to get that. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I hope that they are able to get that. Okay. Okay, so basically all of that, the happy juice, it's all, it runs low, it runs stagnant. So what do? We get up, we do movement, we run around, and then we're able to come back, and that prefrontal cortex of the brain, the learning center of the brain, is able to start again. Okay, that's what a brain break is. So here's some of the few examples: deep breathing exercises, yoga, movement songs. These are things that we need to be doing once every block of time that is appropriate for that age group. So for 2-year-olds, 2 times 3, that would be every 6 minutes, even if you don't see that they're starting to get all wormy. And you can do the math from there. I'm not a math person, but, oh, my favorite, okay, thank you. My Facebook Live is working. I'm really sorry about this, guys. I am going to have a serious chat with that Zoom guy that I spoke to the other day. Okay, I hope they can find it. Thank you for that, Sippy, for responding. Okay, so deep breathing exercises, yoga, movement songs. These are all things that can be done virtually to help your children and your students when they get into those times that are difficult. And they're things that should be implemented, like I said, ritualistically in your classroom, but also through Zoom or through whatever virtual learning that you are doing with your students. Okay. If there are any questions, like I said, you guys can just jot them down. I want to get into this because this, I feel, is so important. And I actually was speaking to because I do parenting coaching also, and I was speaking to a client of mine just the other day, and we were talking about this: setting goals for ourselves. We are going to continue to let ourselves down if we expect to be superheroes, right? So number one, you are human. I know it goes without saying, but sometimes we just need to hear it. You are human. You have families of your own. You have a life of your own. And this is hard. This is really, really hard. So number one, you are human. Number two, you have limited resources. There's only so much we can do. And number three, this is uncharted territory. So before we start anything else, I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to remember that the bottom line is you have to give yourself some grace. Okay, you guys are all here, which means you're looking to make yourselves better, to improve, and that's amazing. But you have to give yourselves grace, right? Perfection is unattainable. Okay. All right. So this is something that I like to call classroom salesmanship. Now, my husband actually helped me come up with this, and I thought it was brilliant. I will give him his credit where credit is due. Classroom salesmanship. He is a businessman. And what do we do when we're businessmen or businesswomen? We have something that we believe in. We work at it really, really hard. And then we sell the heck out of it, right? And how do we sell it? We sell it by going out and speaking to people. We have charisma, we have enthusiasm, and those are the business people that end up being successful. So the same is true in a classroom with virtual learning. There's something called charisma in the classroom. I know it sounds funny, but it is something that's very, very important. Charisma. So what is charisma? Well, I have my hats over here, okay, if I can actually get them to sit on my head. So some practical tips for how you can help your children stay engaged in the situation is every day, every week, put on accessories, wear something different. And then you ask them, something's different. What do you notice? It sounds funny. It really, really works. And by the way, someone's asking for tips for 2-year-olds. The sillier, the better. The sillier, the better. Number 2, okay, so sadly, as Rabbi David pointed out to me, my virtual backgrounds for some reason right now are not working. But one thing that I think is very, very meaningful to children is to go into your school and take a picture of your classroom. So this is not a picture of my classroom, but this is a picture of a classroom. And when the child signs on to whatever virtual learning that he's doing, there you are, and where are you? You're sitting right in the place that we call home, right? Because remember, children need that routine and they need that connection. And by doing that, little things here and there. Okay, sorry, someone just, and that's something that is really, really meaningful and impactful for them, okay? Your background. Can you see where I am? I know that I have a 3.5-year-old, and I can imagine that if his teacher got on sitting in the exact place that he would love to run into school every single day, that would be something that would hook him in and bring him in, okay? These little things that make the connection just a little bit stronger. Okay, I'm gonna take this off my head. I hope nobody minds. Whew. Sweating a little. Okay. The next thing that, again, I'm sure you all do, but it's something that is so, so important, is to make sure that you open up your session with some sort of greeting, whether it is a greeting of song or movement or whatever it is, some sort of greeting, and you end with something else. Okay, so I know that in my school, what we used to do is, I don't know if everybody knows this song, but I would start with the movement, usually clapping on my thighs and then my hands. And we would go around and we'd sing to everybody. And we'd say, excuse my voice, I'm gonna sing for you guys. And it goes like this. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to see you. And then when you go around and you say hello to every single person, they get the chance to come up with their motion, with whatever it is that they're gonna do. And of course they come up with all sorts of crazy things, and that's fine. But the idea is, even in that moment when they are in their world and you are in your world, you're reaching into their world and you're pulling them back in. And not only are you pulling them back in, you're also pulling everyone else back into that community. Because you know that school family that we've been so fortunate to be a part of for the entire year, that the children are missing? That's what's happening when you're bringing them back in like that. Okay, here, Yitzhak, can you continue talking to people, tell them to go to Facebook? Okay, so this is what I call charisma. Charisma, what does it mean? If you are really into it, they're gonna be into it too. Okay, let's continue. All right, number 2, enthusiasm, be excited. Again, we know this already, right? We know this already. Be excited. What does that mean practically? I actually was gonna make one of these with my own expressions. I still have a class that I teach, not regularly, but once a week. And if there was a fly on the wall with my facial expressions every single time I spoke to these children, it would be ridiculous. Okay, so facial expressions, so important. This is what I was telling my husband earlier. If you think that you are being as expressive as possible, be a little more expressive, right? Facial expressions, huge. Body language, get into it. Move your body around. This is something that, like I said, hooks them in and brings them in. Remember, we have our limitations, right? We have our limitations. We are not able to be there physically with these children. So how can I capture their attention and at least maintain it for as long as is possible? Okay? And then this one, be silly. Okay. Second. Okay. When you are teaching through virtual classrooms. Oh, I see someone saying here that some say that it can give mixed messages to bring into the classroom. Okay, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to keep all these questions here, and I am going to come back to these. This was the last one someone's asking me. Okay, and by the way, I just want to put as an aside, this will be recorded, so it will be there for you all to watch again if you would like to. Also, if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint, that can be emailed to you as well. I don't know if that's helpful, if you guys are trying to just quickly write down what it is that you see. Okay. I just want to bring this, I want to kind of speak about this for a second, because someone said just now in my personal questions here, some say that it can give mixed messages to bring the classroom into the younger age. So I don't know which age that is. The majority of what I'm talking about now is really from 2 to 5, let's say. And I definitely hear that. My perspective is the most important thing for these children is to maintain that connection. And yes, it might be that at first they see it and they're confused by it, but that's also a conversation that can be had with the class. There can be a conversation that happens where we speak about the fact that we cannot be together right now, but at least you're there and I'm here and we're a school family still. So I can see how that would be a perspective. I don't personally agree with it. I think that that connection piece is more important than anything. And by the way, these 2-year-olds are very smart, as we know, and they're with it, and they can definitely be communicated with. They know they're at home. So it's something that I think is very, very important, actually. Okay. I see a lot of people want the slides. No problem. No problem. Okay. So ask questions. All right. So we're going to talk about something that you most likely are doing, like I said, in your classrooms already. But now you've got a situation where you have children who are completely in a different world. They're in their world, miles and miles away. And you're in your world on this side of the screen. So when you're in a classroom, you're able to look at a child in their eyes, you'll be able to bring them into the conversation, and that is how you maintain that impactful kind of communication. But when I'm on this side of the screen and you're on that side and they're on that side of the screen, how do you do that? Okay, so asking a lot of questions, a lot of questions. So sadly, like I said again, and Rabbi David, you said you would share yours, but my backgrounds are not working. It's actually very frustrating because they were working before. But what I like to do is put up different kinds of backgrounds in my virtual background. Sometimes there'll be pyramids in the background, a real picture of the Egyptian pyramids, or maybe I'll be at a farm, or maybe I'll be at the grocery store. Not really, but in the picture. And the conversations, the same conversations that I would be having in my circle if I was in person with these children, I'm now having virtually. So tons and tons of questions. And it's so, so important. And I wrote this at the end, but I'm just going to say it now, that you are constantly calling these children by name, that their names are constantly coming out of your mouth throughout every single sentence that you say. And the reason for that is obvious. One hand, it's the attention situation where you're trying to maintain their attention. But on the other hand, it's also a matter of that connection. And anyone who's taken a workshop with me knows that there are 2 things that I talk about ad nauseum. One is going to come later. I work both of these concepts into all my workshops. One is going to come later, so I'm going to leave that to the side. But the first one is connection, and I talk about it all the time. And the social emotional aspect of what is happening right now with these children is so chaotic for them that needs to be our main focus. And by continuing to say their names, every single time we say their name, we are pulling them back into this world. Remember, they're in their world and we're in our world. And we're going on a journey to bring them, those two worlds together. So it's very important. So these are some of the questions that we speak about, these open-ended questions. What do you notice? What does this remind you of? I like to have lots of accessories around. Maybe I'll be wearing, you know, in this, I think my child probably stood on this. I'll be wearing this and I'll say, what does this remind you of? Someone will say cowboys, someone else will say the cat in the hat. It doesn't matter, but that connection is being made every single time that question is asked, right? How many? Why do you think this happened? What do you think will happen if? And by the way, like I said, we're doing this all the time in our classrooms. Now we take the level that we were doing it and we go 3 levels above, okay? How many ways could you do this? Could you get to this conclusion? How are these different or similar? Tell me about your day. And the main thing of this whole slide, the most important thing is say the children's names over and over again. Okay. All right, let's move out of that. I'm just gonna leave that for a minute. If anybody wants to write anything down, just gonna take some water. Okay. Okay, all right, let's continue. Okay, again, remember, we're talking about classroom, what did we call it here? Classroom salesmanship. And again, we have worked on created something and now we're trying to sell it, right? And how do we do that? How does a successful salesman or saleswoman sell? Well, I know that for me, if I go into a store and the person is really, really interested in what I have to say, maybe I'm a total sucker, that's possible, then I'm gonna be more likely to connect to that person, right? So active listening. All right, so when you are communicating with the child through virtual learning, there is gonna be that extra distance that's happening. And a lot of times with these children, because they haven't seen us in so long, now there's even more of that extra distance that's happening. And so there may be a little bit of hesitation when you're trying to engage them. But the most important thing is that you allow the child to express him or herself. And what I like to do is I like to have visual aids, and I'm gonna talk more about this at the end because I do have a whole slide or 2 on this, but I like to have visual aids. Let me just put my camera up so I can see that you can all see me. I like to have visual aids, usually on popsicle sticks, to show the children right in the screen, okay? So that when one child is talking, the other child is listening. You can make these yourself, okay? Talk. And these visual aids are really, really important in helping the children understand that one person is talking and it's not their turn yet, right? So you wait 5 to 10 seconds for your child to think and formulate the response, and don't forget to smile and nod enthusiastically. I was actually speaking to a child the other day in this, it's kindergarten age, but that's still very similar age, and he was very shy. He hadn't spoken to me in a while, and I asked a question, and I noticed that he was a little stuttery in his response, but I did see that he was trying to express something. So what did I do? I kind of smiled and nodded like an idiot. I literally was smiling and nodding enthusiastically the whole time. And I noticed that as I did that, while I was making eye contact through the camera, he started to open up a little bit more. And so that is what active listening does. That's the impact of it. You allow the child to fully answer the question without interrupting. And you invoke responses from the other children, because remember, we started off in our classroom as a school family. And I do this because there's a song about school family, because in ASL, this is family. And like many of you, if you've been to one of my workshops, I may have even taught it to you. But the school family song from the beginning of the year creates this atmosphere of family and community. And sadly, when we're dealing with kids through virtual learning, that is lost. It just is. It's going to be lost. So how do you recreate that? We have to start from the beginning. How do we recreate that? We start bringing in the conversation from child to child, right? So for example, Josh, did you hear that? Sarah saw a cow while she was in the car. Have you ever seen a cow? This sounds very kind of simplistic, but it works. And by the way, don't be scared to kind of get into the camera. I spend a lot of my time in this bubble because that is what the children see when they're looking at their screen, right? Okay. And then the acknowledgement. Wow, Sarah, that must have been so fun, sad, exciting, whatever it is that she is expressing through whatever story she's telling. Someone's asking me a really, really good question, which I am going to put to the side, and I'm going to answer later. Hopefully we get to that point. Okay. Keep the questions coming, please. Okay, so acknowledgement. Wow, that must have been fun. That must have been exciting. Okay. Ooh, I went a little too far. Okay. Okay, so just to go back to our outline of what we were going to get through today, the first thing that we were going to talk about was setting appropriate goals. Setting appropriate goals for children, setting appropriate goals for us as educators. And like I said, as parents as well, it goes across the whole stage, whatever you want to call it, right? And then we spoke a little bit about what we like to call classroom salesmanship, which is kind of the tactics that we use in order to maintain engagement with children. The charisma, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the listening, the asking questions. These are the things that we use in order to maintain that engagement. But now we're getting into the third aspect of the workshop, and that is what activities we can actually use to implement those tactics. So now we know we should be enthusiastic. We know we should ask questions. We know all these things. But now, how do we do that while having these activities running at the same time, right? And just as an aside, we did speak about this for a second. Like I said about parents, obviously it helps when we have that partnership. Often we do, and often we don't. All the activities that we're going to talk about, that is kind of something that, most kids are not going to sit there on their own and do it. So this is assuming that you have that kind of partnership, because again, we are using what we have been dealt with, right? This is the reality of the situation. Okay, so remember I said that there were two things that people who have taken my workshops know that I am very into. One is connection. And the other is something that I like to call transdisciplinary curriculum. Well, I don't like to call it that. That is what it's called. Transdisciplinary curriculum. So if you're a word person like I am, and you break that down, then you could probably figure out what it is if you don't know already. Many of you probably know already. And that is the following. So the fancy definition is the exploration of a relevant concept that integrates the perspectives of multiple disciplines in order to connect new knowledge and deepen understanding of real life experiences. What does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, so this is what it means. That's not what it means. This is what it means. What it means is we take a theme or an idea or a concept, and then we kind of use that as a thread to weave through all the different academic areas. So what does that mean? That means if we are learning about, the life cycles, springtime, then maybe then the art project is going to be connected to life cycles, and the science project is going to be connected to life cycles, and the literacy is going to be connected to life cycles. And as opposed to having just independent kind of activities that don't connect at all, there is a common thread that is woven through the whole thing. And the reason why we do this is kind of multifaceted. One is that it just creates this fluidity this continuity of learning. And as we know about young children, they need that continuity in order to be as successful as they can. And then the other reason that we do that is because transdisciplinary curriculum builds meaningful and enduring understanding. What does that mean? It means that this child learns something about a chick, let's say a chick hatching out of an egg, and then when he does a science experiment where he puts the egg in vinegar, now in his brain, there is a connection made. And every single connection that is made in the brain carves out pathways for future learning. You know, I always like to give this analogy of a hiker. Does anyone hike? I'm just curious if anyone here hikes. If you're from Florida, you probably don't hike, but are there any hands up for people who hike? Yes. Great. Oh, good. Oh, I'm seeing so many names that I recognize. I'm so happy you're all here. So when the first person who has ever gone to a mountain, they don't know where to go. The trails are not carved out yet. They're just dirt. They're just grass. He has a hard time figuring out where to go. But after he has traveled that pathway over and over again, and all the people who came after him have traveled that pathway over and over again, by the time I come along, or any of you who like to go hiking, that pathway is already carved for you. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with what we're talking about? Well, every single time a connection is made in the brain between a piece of knowledge that a child has learned and a new piece of knowledge that's connected, there's pathways in the brain that are being hollowed out in order to lead to future academic success. That means that a math activity that a child does at 3 years old that connects to something else in his brain is actually going to lead to future reading success, or success in analysis, or success in science, right? Because we are carving out those connections in the brain. Okay, and that is why transdisciplinary curriculum is so, so important. Okay, so someone asked me here, how can we get parents into this? Or did I cover that already? So I did kind of touch on it. And the bottom line with parents is we can only do what we can do. And I said at the beginning of the class that I am a parent of 4. And I know that I spend all day running around my house from this person to that person to that person. And sometimes I have it in me to be involved, and sometimes not as much, right? So like I said, we can always reach out to parents, and we should, and if we have relationships with parents, and I know many of you are actually taking supplies to houses and whatever it is, or emailing, and all of that is great, but you can only go as far as you can go. And then after that, you know, you hope them and you ask them, like someone said here, invite them so they know we love them to be there. Absolutely. You can invite them to your circle. You can even include them in your good morning song. I know that the parents in my classes always love for me to ask them, you know, what different, just to get a lot of really funny ones, what different, you know, motions they would like to do. So yeah, that's basically that question. Okay. Okay, so this is an image. I did not make this image. I was gonna make one, but then I found this one, so I figured why make it? It's not really so pertinent to early childhood in the sense that there is, you know, geography, although we do learn that, design and technology, although we do that too with STEM. But basically, this is a visual to help us understand what I mean by transdisciplinary curriculum. And that is that you start with a theme, or you start, and it doesn't have to be a theme like, you know, springtime or something. It could be, we're learning, you know, there's an emergent curriculum. A child really, I used to teach it at a school where the children were obsessed with millipedes, okay? Obsessed with millipedes. So we created an entire unit, and every single academic area was connected to that study of millipedes. And that's what I mean by transdisciplinary curriculum. So let's get back to this. So I wanted to give you guys ideas of what I mean by transdisciplinary curriculum and how we can do this virtually. So I got this book And I'm sure you all do read alouds with your kids. And I got this book. It's one of my favorite books. It's called Little Giraffe's Big Idea. And it's about kindness, and it's about, inclusion, which is something I like to speak about a lot, and I'm sure you all do too. And it's something that I always like to start with a book, and then I break kind of down from there other activities that I kind of like to teach to the kids. Let me see if someone's asking me a question. Okay, so the read aloud. So let's talk about read alouds. So we spoke already about this, using animated tones, facial expressions, and body languages. Body language, when you see me read a book, I'm gonna read you guys a little bit. You can kind of tell what I mean by this, right? Okay, Little Giraffe's Big Idea. So I would start by reading this. And by the way, if my virtual backgrounds were actually working, I would probably put up a virtual background of some sort of African safari scene, like in the Sahara Desert or something like that. And I would get really close into the camera, and I would start to read, right? And I would ask questions, open-ended questions, think alouds. I wonder how he's feeling. Look at his face. Oh no, he does not look happy. And if there was a repeating book or a repeating part of the book, then I would obviously engage the children to help me with that, right? And then what I would do is I would plan the rest of my curriculum for the week or for the next couple of days around this subject matter, okay? Little Giraffe's Big Idea. So I had put together some ideas of what I would do. And remember, for our brain breaks that we do every 9 minutes or 12 minutes or 6 minutes, yoga is something that is really, really beneficial for so many reasons, but specifically when you start connecting it to whatever curriculum you're teaching, that's when it takes on a whole different level of meaning. So this is Safari Animal Yoga. And I don't know how many of you guys are into yoga, but this is something that I would definitely do. And this is something that can be done with 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. Someone is raising their hand, Elaine. If you want to type in the question box, then that's probably the best way to go about going about asking me a question or whatever it is. Okay, so this is the first thing, Safari Animal Yoga. The next thing that I would do would be some sort of science experiment. And like I said, this is something that you would have to have the partnership of the parents for. I chose an activity that I felt was made up of materials that could easily be found in a home. Paper towel. This happens to be watercolor paint, but you could even use food coloring. You could use watered down paint. You could soak markers and use that, and then paintbrushes. And what it does is it creates this look, as you can see, of giraffe skin, but it also teaches a scientific concept, and that scientific concept is called capillary action. And that's something that I always try to use the actual words when talking to the children. And it's that ability for liquid to flow in small spaces. And that's something that is connected to this science experiment. So what have we done? We've taken this concept of giraffes, which the kids have now connected to through this character, and we've taught them something about capillary action. So it's those pathways in the brain that are still being kind of carved through. Okay, someone's asking me another one. Oh, you do yoga. Okay, perfect. I don't, but that's great. Okay. And then you allow each child to show his giraffe skin to his friends. You discuss the similarities, the differences, and you can use all different colors, and then they're able to then kind of take ownership of that particular activity. I put 2 art activities here. One could be for the younger kids, the animal prints could be for the younger kids, the 2-year-olds or even the 3-year-olds. And then the binoculars, which again, these are things that can be found around the home We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not doing crazy things. This is stuff that is so accessible for all these children. And then what can be done is then you could do a scavenger hunt with the kids. So a lot of you are doing scavenger hunts already. I know because I've spoken to many teachers who tell me that scavenger hunts are really, really fun for these kids to learn virtually. But the question is why? And remember I said that they're in their world and we are in our world. So by sending them off with their binoculars to find something that's connected to this theme of animals, giraffes, safari, now what they've done is they've brought something from their world and they've fused it with your world. And that's that connection that's so important. So I love doing that also with my own children, and they love doing that. And now I wish I had my background on, but since the backgrounds aren't working, what I would do around now is I would take my safari hat, and I would put on my virtual background, which would be this picture of the giraffe. And I would say, I wonder where we're traveling today. Now, the internet has an incredible resource when it comes to all different kinds of things. And one of those things are what we call virtual expeditions. This is really fun. Okay, there are websites that you can find that take children through. I found one that took them to discover the Egyptian pyramids. There are ones that take them to the Great Wall of China, and they're interactive and they're able to see, and you can go down the steps and you can go up the steps, and you do it all through the screen share option. Okay. So that's something that I would also do, the screen share. And I like to do the virtual expedition every single week. And if that's something that you can connect to whatever of the transdisciplinary ideas that you happen to be focusing on, then that's extremely impactful. Because it's one thing to see the giraffes in this beautiful book, which I love, in the Sahara Safari, but it's another thing to actually see real animals in their habitat, which most likely those children either have not ever seen or will not see, at least in the foreseeable future. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, I know we started late, so I was trying to get through this kind of a little quicker, and I'm going to go to your questions in a minute. But the last thing that I really want to talk about, because I hear this from many people, is how to handle discipline in virtual learning. This is probably like the main question that people ask. How do we handle discipline through virtual learning? What do we do when a child is just not engaged, is just not doing what he's supposed to do through virtual learning? And in order to answer that, I want to kind of go back to the first part of our outline, which is setting appropriate goals. And remembering that children at this age, to have them learn virtually at all is kind of not so reasonable. And if anybody here has taken any kind of workshops, social emotional workshops with conscious discipline or anything else, then you'll remember and you'll know that when we talk about discipline, we're talking about teaching. We're not talking about punishing, and we're not talking about controlling or putting in their place. And in order to teach appropriately, we have to remember where these children are coming from and what they are able to handle. The same way as we wouldn't expect a 2-year-old to speak with proper grammar, right? If a 2-year-old came to you and said, me tired, me want to go to sleep now, no part of you would ever want to correct that child. I think we can all agree, right? Because developmentally we understand that that's where that child's verbal development is holding, right? And it would be unfair and unreasonable to punish or to correct that kind of behavior in a severe way, right? But when it comes to this kind of thing, for some reason, we kind of revert to this idea of, I have control over my classroom and this child isn't doing what he's supposed to do. So just to remember to keep in mind that to discipline means to teach, And one way that I find, at least, and this is the class management aspect of virtual learning, the same way as you would do these things in your classroom, and that is to have a schedule, a visual schedule for these children to see. Children's first language before verbal, before written, is visual. Everything they see, they process before they even think about the word for it. So to have that schedule one by one put up in front of the screen for the children to see is extremely, extremely beneficial. Okay, so I put up, again, you can make your own. This is what I would show the children. I would hold it up and say, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're up to now. And that's, you know, our visual schedule that helps keep them on task, even at times that, you know, it's difficult for them. And in terms of behavior expectations, I, in my classroom, always like to do commitments where not rules or anything that's harsh like that, but the idea that you are committing to being a part of our class. And how are you committing? Well, you're committing by upholding these expectations, or at least trying to. So this is an actual picture. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry. It's an actual picture of a chart that I had made for the last class that I taught. And it had watching eyes, kind words, listening ears. It also had gentle touches. It also had walking feet and these kinds of positive ways to express expectation. But obviously, these are the main three that are probably the most relevant to virtual learning, right? And this is something that I would literally do every single time we would meet on Zoom or any other kind of platform. Let's remember what our commitments are, because when we bring those commitments to the forefront, that's when the children remember what it is that they are invested in. Okay, so it's that reminder, it's that constant reminder with positive words as opposed to negative words. You wouldn't say, don't talk while I'm talking. You would say, we're using listening ears now. And that's something that translates and processes the most appropriately to children of this age. So those are the commitments. Visuals are key, spoke about that already. And okay, so that brings us to the end of the content part of the workshop. Like I said, there was no reinventing of the wheel. This was just a reminder that probably most of the things that you are doing in your classroom really are relevant to virtual learning as well, and even more so. So I see there are a few questions. If you have any other questions, please, please, please just write them out over here so that I can address them. I see one here from Caitlin. How can we combat the noise of home life in other children's videos when waiting for one child to formulate a response? Currently, we're muting the rest of the class. Feels a little condescending. Okay, so it does feel a little condescending from the get-go, because when you think about muting, you think you're like silencing the child. But I think that it's something that needs to be spoken about at the beginning when you're speaking about the expectations. And that is that in order to be able to hear your friend, this is something that we have to do. And then when it's your turn, you'll be unmuted and we'll have to do this. It's like a classroom management that has never been seen before. But that is kind of definitely necessary when it comes to virtual learning, right? Because we've never had to deal with this kind of situation before. And a lot of times I feel with these kinds of things, we take our adult perspective and we kind of put it on the situation with the children, and they would never even think of it as condescending or mean or anything like that. So, I mean, that's what I would say. I would say that all of this stuff that you're doing in your classes through virtual learning should be out in the open as expectations for the children in your class, so that they know that this is the way the class is operating. So I hope that answered it. But yeah, I would say muting is the only way to do it. There's no other way. There's no other way to cancel that out. Because remember, you can't control what's happening in someone's home. The only thing you can control is however it is that you're going to be able to manage it. So yeah, that is something that I would do. Okay, someone else wrote here, earlier you mentioned a family song. I love that. Can you elaborate on it a little bit? trying to imagine what song is appropriate and what occasions we would sing it. Okay, so this is a big thing in the conscious discipline and social emotional world. And that is that every single time I would meet with my class at the beginning of the year, especially in order to kind of plant the seeds for this idea of community, we would sing this song about a school family. I can definitely send you the link, or send you the information. But the main idea of it is that within the song, it was a cute song with movement. And there was also physical touch that was happening between the children. So for example, we would say, shake hands with a friend or high five with a friend. And that kind of connection created this feeling of family in the classroom. And it's something that can still happen now, except obviously that physical touch now has to be virtual, right? So we would say like maybe thumbs up to a friend. Maybe we would say, you know, smile or something else, fist bump into the screen safely. But it's something that really is incredible with creating this sense of community. And like everyone who knows me knows, connection, connection, connection is the name of the game. So that is something that is definitely an amazing song. Really, really amazing. So I don't know if there are any other questions. I don't see any other questions. If you do have a question, please, you can email me. I am going to put up my information here. I want to let you know that I have an upcoming webinar, shameless plug, upcoming 3-part conscious parenting webinar that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So you can, if you would like to register, if you are a parent and that's something that's interesting to you, then you can go to this website and you can do that, or you can email me and I'll send it to you. And this is my information. If you have Instagram, would love the follow. Otherwise, you can email me right here, yehudis@imaginedconsulting.com. And I will send anybody who wants the song, I will send the song. Anyone who wants the link to the recording, I'm gonna put on YouTube, and anyone who wants any of the material, I can send that to you as well. So I just wanna say thank you to everybody. If there's no other questions, I really, really apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning. That was unfortunate. And to those who are joining us on Facebook Live because they couldn't get into the Zoom class, I apologize for that as well. I really, really hope you enjoyed, and stay in touch. And good luck to everybody. Wishing you all well, success. Mwah. Have an amazing rest of the year, and hopefully we'll see you.
Imagine